Today we're going to see Satan continue to flail away at God as he mocks God. And through Antichrist, there are more counterpunches that are thrown where Antichrist does things that are similar to what Jesus will do, but there are evil twists at every turn. And in this attempt to beat God to the punch, we will look at how Satan tries to control the world through the king he sits on the throne. Let's dig in. All right, so we continue and should be able to finish up today the Antichrist, the study on Antichrist. Remember that we will kind of stop at the point that he is bound up and captured and thrown into the lake of fire. We're going to back up because kind of paralleling all of this is the stirring of the king for the return of the king. And so we'll back up to the start of the tribulation period again and walk through it from Christ's perspective as he gets ready to return. And so we'll be looking at the seal judgments, the trumpet judgments, and the bowl judgments found in the book of the Revelation. But when we left off last time, we were talking about Satan's attempt to counterfeit what God's going to do. And I'm calling these counter punches, as Satan in a last gasp tries to mock God, and while mocking God, puts a man on the throne that does some similar parallel things to what God has revealed he will do through Jesus Christ. And so remember that counterpunch number one was get to the top. God is going to set his king on his holy mountain, and he'll be on the top because he is the king of righteousness, and he's going to bring blessing and prosperity. But Satan will attempt to counterpunch that. He will set a man at the top, but he will get to the top through cunningly devised schemes, and he will offer prosperity and a blessing, but then in the middle of it all, it will all come crashing down. Counterpunch number two is a play off of the Prince of Peace. When you think of the phrase Prince of Peace, we think of Jesus Christ. And Antichrist will start out offering peace and will promote peace and make a treaty with Israel and protect them for a period of time. But in the middle of that covenant that he makes with Israel, he will become the prince of treachery, and he will break his covenant in the middle of Daniel's 70th week. Counterpunch number three is setting up headquarters in Jerusalem. Christ will set up his throne in the heavenly New Jerusalem right there, and Antichrist would like to have a throne in the same place. So he will set up headquarters near Jerusalem. Daniel 11:45, he shall plant the tents of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain, yet he shall come to his end, and no one will help him. All right, here's where we left off, counterpunch number 4, worship in the temple. We all know that the temple is designed to reflect Jesus Christ and his ultimate sacrifice. Everything about the temple points to Jesus Christ. And ultimately, God wanted Israel to see pictured throughout all of these ceremonies and sacrifices, things that would eventually be fulfilled and point to Jesus Christ and the worship of Jesus Christ. So if worship of God in the temple points to Christ, Antichrist wants a piece of the action in the temple. And so he will seek to control the worship in the temple and ultimately point all worship to himself. And he'll seek to use the temple in a religious power play to fulfill his purposes. Now, the question was asked 2 weeks ago. This refers to the temple, yet there is no temple. So somehow between now and then, we do believe the temple will be rebuilt. And we know Israel wants nothing better or more to do than just that. So somehow the temple comes back into play, and perhaps, I'm speculating, but perhaps Antichrist is a key figure in all of that and allowing them to rebuild. Making sure that they can rebuild and are safe to rebuild. But however it happens, the temple comes back into play. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verses 3 through 4, we read, "Let no one deceive you by any means, for that day," it's the day of the Lord, "will not come unless the falling away comes first, and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God." And so there's a real power grab here by Antichrist, where he will use the temple to point worship to himself, seek to be worshipped, to exalt himself above God, to show that he is God. Matthew chapter 24 and verses 15 through 16 is a reference by Jesus Christ to this event, this power grab by Antichrist, and it's called the abomination of desolation. That's a phrase that also comes from the book of Daniel. Christ refers to that statement and that prophecy in Daniel when he says, "Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains." So this is in the context where Christ has been asked about the return. When will he return? And Christ has revealed he doesn't know the exact time, only the Father knows that exact time. But here's some signs, here's some things to be looking for, and he does have this Mount of Olivet discourse where he gives all kinds of hints of things that will be taking place, things you can see that let you know the end is coming, the end is near, and it's really going to get bad when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place. And again, I believe that fits Thessalonians' statement where this power grab by Antichrist will take place in the temple, and he will sit there and invite worship. And he will desecrate God's holy place. We know that the forerunner, kind of the pre-picture of Antichrist, was a man named Antiochus Epiphanes. He did something very similar in the temple, and he sacrificed a pig inside of the temple, and was kind of this abomination of desolation. Daniel chapter 9, verses 26 through 27. "Then He shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. But in the middle of the week he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering. And on the wing of abominations shall be one who makes desolate, even until the consummation which is determined is poured out on the desolate. And I think that's part of what Christ is referring to, and reveals more details about that. That brings us to counterpunch number 5. Counterpunch number 5. Every knee shall bow. If every nation on earth will bow the knee to Jesus Christ, Antichrist will be satisfied with nothing less. And so Satan will raise up this ruler who will briefly control the entire world. Revelation chapter 13 and verse 4. So they worshipped the dragon who gave authority to the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him?" And the idea here is that there's no nation on earth that can stand before his fury and before his power and what he ends up doing. Who is able to make war with him? Who's the they? Well, again, that's every nation on earth, every person on earth, as he is this powerful beast, and no one can stand before him. Then in Revelation chapter 13, verse 7, a couple of verses later, it was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. What does that sound like? You've seen that phrase before. That's a scene in heaven where every tongue, every tribe, every nation is represented before Jesus Christ. But here, all authority is given to him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. So he controls the whole world. Daniel chapter 11, verses 38 through 40. But in their place he shall honor a God of fortresses, and a God which his fathers did not know he shall honor with gold and silver, with precious stones and pleasant things. Thus he shall act against the strongest fortresses with a foreign god, which he shall acknowledge and advance its glory. And he shall cause them to rule over many and divide the land for gain. At the time of the end, the king of the south shall attack him, and the king of the north shall come up against him like a whirlwind, with chariots, horsemen, and with many ships, and he shall enter the countries, overwhelm them, and pass through. So there's a little mini rebellion that's quashed, and nobody's able to stand up to him. Nobody's able to stand against him. And he is every knee, figuratively speaking, every knee bows before him. Counterpunch number 6. The 6th counterpunch is King of Kings. If Christ is recognized as the King of Kings and will rise to the top of all kings, then Antichrist wants to be at the top of all of the kings. And he will rise to the top of all of the 10 kings who were currently in this revived Roman Empire, or this revised Roman Empire. The Bible reveals that the Roman Empire kind of morphs into a shape where there are 10 alliances, 10 kings that form this alliance, but they all have roots in the original Roman Empire. And the 10 kings who are in this alliance eventually will all submit to him, and he will rise to the top of all of the kings. And unfortunately, for 3 of the 10, they aren't so willing to submit, and so he forces them to submit, and he unseats 3 of them and eliminates 3 of the kings. The key passage in the Bible that speaks of Christ rising to the top of all kings and being King of Kings is Psalm 2, the 2nd Psalm. And here the kings of the earth are unseated by God. And here are all these kings that mock God and think they are in control, and the king sits on God's holy mountain, and he rises to the top. Here's just a couple of quotes from Psalm 2. Why do the nations rage and the people plot a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bonds in pieces and cast away their cords from us. The psalm goes on to say, he who sits in the heavens shall laugh. And then it talks about Christ ruling with a rod of iron and God declaring his holy king. And near the end of the psalm, verse 11, God says to all the kings of the earth, serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, which is a sign of submission and reverence. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry and you perish in the way. When his wrath is kindled but a little, blessed are all those who put their trust in him. So in the counterpunch, Antichrist rises to the top, unseats the 3 kings that won't submit, and receives the submission of the other 7. Here's the vision in Daniel chapter 7, verses 19 through 20. Then I wished to know the truth about the 4th beast, which was different from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, with its teeth of iron and its nails of bronze, which devoured, broke in pieces, and trampled the residue with its feet. And the 10 horns that were on its head, and the other horn which came up, before which 3 fell, namely that horn which had eyes and a mouth, which spoke pompous words, whose appearance was greater than his fellows. And then you come down to the interpretation in verse 23. Thus he said, the 4th beast shall be a 4th kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all other kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, trample it, break it in pieces. The 10 horns are 10 kings, who shall arise from this kingdom. And another shall arise after them. He shall be different from the first ones, and shall subdue 3 kings. And he becomes King of Kings. All right. Counterpunch number 7. Counterpunch number 7. Destroy the enemies. Destroy the enemies. If it is true that Christ has plans to destroy his enemies, and Psalm 2 makes that very clear, Antichrist will attempt to do the same. And Satan will prompt Antichrist to destroy his enemies, and those enemies happen to be the righteous saints. The righteous saints. Now, we talked about Psalm 2 and Christ being set on his holy hill, or on God's holy hill by God himself, ruling with a rod of iron. But I'm interested in a passage in Matthew. Matthew chapter 24. And sometimes this passage is confusing because you read it and you immediately are thinking, well, that sounds like the rapture. That sounds like what the rapture would look like. But in the context of what the passage is talking about, I don't believe it's saints that are leaving. It's bad guys who are being taken out by Jesus Christ. They are judged and eliminated, and they do not enter into Christ's kingdom. The person who is left in this story is the one who does get the privilege of entering into the kingdom prepared by Jesus Christ for his saints. They are the righteous ones, and they enter into the kingdom. Matthew chapter 24, verses 36 through 42 say, "But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and did not know until the flood came and took them all away. So also will the coming of the Son of Man be. Then 2 men will be in the field. One will be taken and the other left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill. One will be taken and the other left. Watch, therefore, for you do not know what hour your Lord is coming." So in that day, when Christ comes and the Son of Man appears, the righteous judgment, his righteous judgment will eliminate all of the wicked, and they'll be taken away. They will not enter Christ's kingdom, but the righteous will be left, is my understanding.
So you believe that this is not a rapture passage, but a second coming passage, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my understanding. And the parallel here, if you look at how in the days of Noah, who was left on the earth and who was taken, well, Noah was the one left, and he then inherited an empty world and started again, whereas all those taken were the ones who were judged in the flood, and they were eliminated. And so when he says 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken, the other left, I think that parallel was just illustrated in the days of Noah, is my understanding. That's my interpretation. But now Antichrist, he spends his time hunting down the righteous and wants to destroy them. He wants the ungodly who will worship him to be left, and all of the righteous to be taken and destroyed. 2 key passages of Scripture, Daniel chapter 7 and verse 21. "I was watching, and the same little horn was making war against the saints and prevailing against them." Revelation chapter 13, verse 7. "It was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation." Now, we've read that verse just a few moments ago, but notice how he overcomes the saints, or he's attempting to overcome the saints. And the saints are scrambling to try and stay alive. The saints are scrambling to try and hide. And when he starts his dirty work, that's where Christ gave the warning. When you see the abomination of desolation happen, run. Run for your life.
So this is after the rapture, though?
Yes.
So And the verses before that seem to be talking about that also, like 29 into 30, immediately after the distress of those days. So we're not talking about an event that happened that nobody knew about, happening and everything was going on as normal. After the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not shed its light. We never see that in relation to when he comes to take his people, the rapture. We
Right.
don't see the sun and moon darkening then. And the stars will fall from the sky and the powers of heaven will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky. Then all the people of earth will mourn. This seems to be something very different than the rapture. So the second.
Right.
Yeah.
And you had one more question?
No, I was just looking at a section of scripture up here.
Yeah.
Where were we looking at, Daniel?
Just the verses before that.
In Revelation
The
13?
24 there.
Oh, Matthew.
You're talking about
Matthew
Matthew.
24,
Yeah.
yeah.
He's in Matthew.
So that was 29 and 30, and then even 31, he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet. So we don't see a loud trumpet happening with the rapture either.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
I find it interesting to look at it from the point of view of the Jewish religion. Because, like, even back in the Bible times, God literally gave the Jewish people the practices that they practiced. So, by all rights, what they did, how they did things, was sent by God for them to do. So then as the New Testament came, Jesus came and accomplished these things, and they didn't need them anymore. It was really like in their mind, how can this be? Like, God told us to do it, you're telling us we don't need to? And now looking at this end times, I wonder, like, we see a lot of Christians even will be seduced into this Antichrist and how he's doing things in the peace. And one of the things that the Jewish people did back then was they were waiting for Christ to come to rule. They were waiting for him to come and take care of the enemies and send them down. And that's exactly what the Antichrist is basically going to be doing. He's going to set up some peace. He's going to take out the people that are oppressing them. He's going to, set up the temple. Like, I wonder and I feel like in the mind of the Jewish religion, this is really what, like, man, this is what they were talking about. This is actually happening. They're going to be taking the verses in the Old Testament of this guy that's almost going to die, and he's going to come back with some miracles, and they're going to be like, yeah, they're going to be looking at the prophecies of what we look at for Jesus now and apply it to the Antichrist in the future. And I think that's really going to help push the whole lie of who he's trying to imitate. It's kind of an interesting thought.
Yeah, so the only thing I would say, though, Daniel, is that there has to be some type of a split in the Jewish nation. That while it's intriguing or it's interesting that there could be this push that kind of accepts him, that gets things going, he will turn his fury against the Jews similar to the saints. And God starts a work among the Jews. You've got the sealing of the 144,000, and you've got this, the people of Israel starting to turn back to God, and they will see him for what he is. And they will seek to, at least that faction of Israel will know they need to hide and look for the true Savior. Okay? Let's go to counterpunch number 8. Counterpunch number 8. I'm going to come back to that phrase in Psalm 2. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry and you perish in the way. Now, in Christ's kingdom, we believe that all will freely and willingly give unconditional, unwavering loyalty to Jesus Christ because they love him, and they will willingly submit, and they will bow before him. But if all will give this unconditional, unwavering loyalty, Antichrist will demand the same. Only if he doesn't get it, he'll force it. He will use force to attain it. And Satan will raise up an Antichrist who demands unwavering, unconditional loyalty. Take the mark or else. Come to Revelation 13, verses 15 through 18. He was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. Now, I want you to take notice of the use of the word worship in these verses. The pride of this man will demand that all acknowledge his greatness, his power, the spectacular nature of who he is. But he's not above using terror and coercion to achieve his goals. And one of his weapons is this mark. Take the mark, or you can't operate under my kingdom. And it will be a symbol of your submission or your willingness to obey him. And if you don't take it, he will kill you. And that's why it is so important in the tribulation period, not from God's perspective, you cannot take this mark and be one of his children. Because again, it's a symbol of your submission to Antichrist. Now, I believe that stands in stark contrast and is a huge twist of what Jesus Christ will do. For again, his loyalty is all willing. Those who worship him do so because they're in love with him. And it's not forced and coerced. We give worship to a king who would die for his subjects. A king who wanted so much our best that he died for us. Greater love has no one than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. We have a king who invites us to come and never thirst again, eat and never hunger again. We've fallen in love with his tenderness and his compassion and his kindness. He is a worthy king of respect and honor, reverence and fear. He's not a king who manipulates his subjects through terror and fear. And notice that even in the quote from Psalm 2, which speaks of Christ destroying his enemies, there is an open invitation. Kiss the Son, which is a voluntary act of submission, lest he be angry and you perish in the way. In contrast to Christ, this man is conniving, He has a number assigned to him. The number is 666. Now, a lot has been said in my lifetime about the number 666. For our purposes, I'm just going to try and back away. And there's a lot of speculating we could do, a lot of interesting studies. But I think for what I want to do, let's get the big picture of the number. I believe it is God's way of pointing out how far short of the glory of God man falls. And we have to understand that if you were to assign a number to the King of Kings, to Jesus Christ, it would be the number 7. And if you paralleled it, it would be 777. And it's interesting that in the book of the Revelation, think about it. How many churches are there? How many messengers are there? How many seals are there? 7. How many trumpet judgments are there? 7. How many bowl judgments are there? 7. How many spirits of God are there? 7. So throughout Revelation, 7 is the number that keeps appearing, and that's the number that would be associated with perfection and God. All right, last counterpunch. Just have a couple of minutes. Last counterpunch. The healing of a mortal wound. The healing of a mortal wound. If God raised Jesus from the dead, Satan will do his best to assert his ability to match God by raising up Antichrist, who somehow recovers from a spectacular wound. The passage is Revelation 13, verses 12 through 14, and he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. He performs great signs, so that he makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. He deceives those who dwell on the earth. By those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast, who was wounded by the sword and lived. Now, that is Satan's best attempt to counterfeit, I believe, the resurrection. Now, there's some question and there's interpretations and all kinds of things you can read about. There's a question of whether Antichrist is actually resurrected from the dead. I tend to think no, I don't believe that's what happens. I believe that if Satan could resurrect from the dead, he'd do it more often. He would do it if he could. And so I think that there's a lot of smoke and mirrors here, or there's a lot of technological advance that combined with a supernatural element, again, does bring to life someone who should be dead. That there's no explanation as to why they're alive other than something wild just happened. And Satan takes all the credit and the glory, and that's part of the appeal of Antichrist, and that's why people turn to him, because he was healed in such a spectacular nature. Now again, I don't know how it's all going to play out and how it will work. You do wonder how AI might fit in. You do wonder how the ability to manipulate video and audio fits in. I don't know. But again, from my perspective, that's one of the things about the resurrection, the actual resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. It declares the power of God and tells the whole world he is the only one that could do that. So I just shy away from saying that Antichrist succeeds in resurrecting somebody. I think that whatever happens to him, he should be dead. And there's something pretty spectacular that happens so that he's still alive. But I don't think Satan can resurrect him. That's my opinion and my interpretation.
There are miracles surrounding it, but the actual death and resurrection is not.
Right. That's my opinion. That's how I would see it. Yeah, and as Daniel pointed out, there are some miracles, there's some signs that are given by the false prophet to try and confirm that this is some special guy in the Antichrist. All right? So this mortal wound healing is Satan's attempt to counterfeit the resurrection. All right? So we've looked at 9 parallels that when Antichrist comes to power, it's Satan trying to beat God to the punch. If you can do it, I can do it before you. And bad guy. And so, as the scriptures talk about, he will come to his end, and there will be no one to help him. The one who comes to put him to an end is the return of the king. And we're going to back up now, and we're going to talk about the stirring of the king. If you had someone mocking you, and you had the whole world worshiping a false, evil man, what would you do about it? Get angry. Very angry. And the wrath of the Lamb will be poured out. All right, that's next week. We'll be here next week. Then there's another missionary, and then another one. Hopefully we can cover the return of the king in 2 weeks or in 2 sessions. I really would like to try and make sure I finish all of this before Easter. That Easter is kind of our breaking point, that I'm done. That's my goal. How good will I do? I don't know. All right, see you in a minute. All right, well, we've come to the end of the counter punches that Antichrist throws. And he's going to meet his end, but we haven't really dug into that yet. We'll come back to that because we want to back up and come back to the start of the tribulation period. For paralleling all of this is the stirring of the king in preparation for the return of the king. So that's what we'll look at in more detail next time. Please join us.